Hi, I'm the True Wise Gamer, giving off my vast knowledge so you may understand games a bit better. No More Heroes is a series that I've been thinking about for a real long time. And every time I ever try to put it down into words, something happens and I'm just not satisfied with it. Because you see, this review has been coming for a real long time. When I first wrote this review, I had played both the original and emulated. And I was thinking about the ways about the nature of how we continue games when we no longer have the ways of actually communicating how it used to play. Kind of like how we kind of think about shoot 'em ups, or where, where you have those arcade games where you have to shoot at the screen, those types of games, without those physical things. And also, if you're wondering, how the hell did I emulate this game? That's a good question. I'll get into it when I talk about the gameplay, because it's possible, it's a little tricky, but trust me on this when I say, it's possible. In any case, that review didn't happen for multiple reasons. Most importantly, losing a lot of the footage due to a bug error that had deleted a lot of other footage that just made me just give up on the review for a while. And also at the time, Nintendo was very litigious on anyone showing their games at all. And sadly in the end, I just made a video about my thoughts on the ending and just a weird annoyance I had at it. I'll talk about it again later, but I'll actually build up on it, okay? Plus, I think I can actually offer a really unique and interesting look at the game now, because I think it's an angle that nobody really wants to talk about, and honestly I can't blame them. We'll talk about it then. But in any case, who made this game? Well, that will be Grasshopper Manufacturer, which is led by Suda51, who is actually the CEO of the company. The best way to describe Suda51 to most people in our industry is to basically say he's the guy who can come up with a lot of cool ideas, but is never able to finance them properly, which is really the sad part about it. Like, every game they ever make is super interesting, but you know for a fundamental fact that their budget was hampering them at times. Still awesome to play, and I still highly recommend most of their games. I'm just telling ya, they're going to feel a little off. In any case, Suda51, at the time of the game's production, No More Heroes, was still rising into stardom after his magnum opus Killer 7 came out, which a lot of people say is the point where he became well known. Though do note, he's been in the industry for a real long time. And sure, he does still do licensed games during that era, which I still think are good. Like, come on people, Samurai Champloo was still a good game. Come on people. And Blood Sea, which is alright. It's more accurate to the series, but I'm not a fan of Blood Sea, but point being, those two games are really good, even though they're licensed games. And were some of the foundations to what No More Heroes was going to be about, in terms of style, gameplay, and feel, for lack of a better term, but in any case. And after being shown the Wii remote, it really started to ferment the idea of No More Heroes, and he began production on the game. I do apologize for kind of going more Wikipedia on this one, since I don't have much to say under the game's development. Like, some of those parts are interesting, but it kind of felt like you need to say it or else it feels wrong, but in any case, I think it's time to actually get started and talk about No More Heroes. The game begins with a short introduction with our main protagonist, Travis Touchdown, who is an otaku who meets a hot chick named Sylvia at a bar, and through her, he learns about his new job, that being an assassin. Now, Travis really likes the job and now wants to reach the very top. So that means beating a lot of people and killing, which now leads us into the real game as we see Travis riding his bike forward into his next job. After killing them fuckheads and killing them straight up, he then calls on us to start the game. And this is where the tutorial begins. And unlike normally how I usually do things where I save the gameplay for a moment where I can talk about everything, I'm actually just gonna talk about it here. Since for the most part, most of the gameplay is here, and the gameplay doesn't fundamentally change after this. Like, you get some more additions, but otherwise, the gameplay stays the same. Now, I'm going to be weird about this and talk about something that I don't usually talk about, Because you see, at the time when I was writing this, and trust me, it's been a while back ago, Sarah Z was making a question about the nature of the Wii Remote with No More Heroes and wondering the motion controls actually impact the game, and I would arguably say yes, but it's a little more complicated than that. But before we talk about that, let's actually talk about the gameplay in a more direct sense. So, combat on the original Wii worked like this. Depending on how you were holding the Wii Remote and pressing the button, it would determine whether or not you were doing a high or low attack, since enemies can block certain attacks. However, in the ports, basically they're just two separate attack buttons, which is fine, I guess, but something is still lost, though it felt more in the other two aspects, in my opinion, than anywhere else. That being recharging your Wii Remote and the final slash. See, as you do your hits with your beam katana, your charge actually goes down, and if you don't keep it charged, you can face a bad situation. And the way to charge it is, well, look at it. And the final slash is when you're about to kill an enemy, and if you press it in the right direction, you just kill them. But if you also place them in a right spot, they can also kill other enemies, which is really neat. The port just makes it a part of the right stick, which isn't a problem in and of itself, but again, something is lost. Like, the best idea that what this port is trying to do, it's trying to keep the idea of it, but not the feeling of it, if that makes sense. I'll expand on this later, but just keep that in mind, okay? Hey, post-edit me here. I forgot to talk about slots. Slots are something that after every time you slice out an opponent, a roulette will play out, and depending on what you get a good bonus. I didn't talk about them because I rarely ever got them, and whenever I did, they basically just won me the round, so it didn't really all that matter. I mean, like, for all intents and purposes, the game is really easy, so I'm not seeing the point. There is also another mechanic called the melee, where you can just mix up some punches and kicks, which is also determined whether or not you're doing a high or low attack. And if you hit enough on certain enemies, you can't do it on bosses for some reason, they become stunned and allow you to grab them to deal massive damage, otherwise mostly just outright killing them. And as you progress throughout the game, you will gain more and more wrestling moves. Because yes, Travis was a former wrestler, though this part is always ignored. Not sure why, but it just is. I ain't questioning it, but you know. You also have a defensive ability where you can just flat out block them, though this eats up some charge. There's also the other ability of the Shadow Step, where it allows you to, after a block, depending on where you flick, it depends usually on which side Travis is blocking on. If you sidestep to that side, you'll have a chance to basically Bayonetta witch time them for a little bit and deal a lot of damage to them. Though for bosses, this doesn't mean you'll be able to hit them freely. They will, after a few hits, go back into some invincibility frames, but, you know, you have it. Though speaking on the bosses are a strange beast in my opinion. I don't have a better word than a mixed bag. Some of them are very simple, where you just need to do and move around them and just attack them whenever you can. Some of them require you to just really be more aware and do something that I'm not entirely sure on. Like, I'm still to this day not sure how the hell you're supposed to handle the final boss. Like, to give you an example of what I'm talking about, let's actually talk about Shinobu. She can actively dodge your Shadow Step, making it mostly worthless in most fights. And having to slice her after certain attacks to deal damage takes a real long time. Or a super powerful attack can just one-shot you if you're just that unlucky. Though to note, the bosses are not just the fight in and of itself, it's the trick to the boss fight, as you'll usually have to fight a bunch of people along the way to fight them, which I'm not sure where these guys come from. Are they like other people who are like, yeah, I can take this guy on? Or is it like a number 2 headband thing where everyone thinks, hey, I just gotta kill this fucker? Something like that? The likely answer is more or less tied into the ending, which I'll talk about in a bit, but, you know. And with nothing much left to talk about, I might as well talk about how I emulated it, because it's interesting because I think there is a way to effectively keep the old controls with this. Essentially, I made the right stick essentially be the motion. So it would allow me to basically move the controllers in any direction I needed to in a moment's notice without really causing an issue with any other control. Sure, that means I would have to change some of the face buttons into other buttons, but otherwise it's pretty easy. The sequel, on the other hand, made it a little more complicated due to certain controls, but otherwise it's practically the same game. And that's mostly the combat. As much as I made it simplistic, there are ways to add to the gameplay and stuff, but we're not entirely done with the gameplay. We're just done with the core gameplay, which I overall think is fine and does get more added bits to it, which we'll talk about in a bit, but let's continue on the story, okay? After a bit of fighting, we finally meet the 10th ranked assassin, Death Metal. Death Metal tells Travis to basically just leave and warns him of what the hell he's wanting to get into. But Travis pays him no heed, thinking about all the things he can achieve and all the blood and all that jazz. But during the fight, and I want to mention this is more important for later, because I find it important to really think about. Just not for this game, but all the games, okay? Where he's basically trying to hype himself up, saying, I gotta kill this fucker, I can't let this dark shit in my head right now, I need to kill him. But he's always trying to find a way out. And soon enough, he does kill him, sending him to paradise. After that, we re-meet Sylvia, the woman from the intro, and she explains that he is now the top-ranked 10th assassin. Also, he's stuck unless he goes to the very top. Truly, Travis has no more exes anymore. Again, we'll talk about this later. He then gets annoyed, but quickly tries to turn this around into trying to make a deal with her, and if he becomes the top, maybe she'll sleep with him, something like that. Yeah, and this is where we gotta really mention it. He's an asshole. Yeah, it's pretty clear after this moment that he's not a very good person, or at least a type of asshole that it's hard to describe to most people, but like, the best way I describe him is that, like, he's not in your face that he's an asshole. He doesn't make it, like, very apparent, but like, the more you're around him, you just realize he's an asshole. But he's not like a malicious asshole, he's just like a general asshole, if that makes sense. And I'm only adding this because a friend of mine made me read Chainsaw Man. He kind of feels like a Denji. I don't know how else to describe it to someone. So yeah, there you go, Zap. You made me read Chainsaw Man. Don't worry, this will make sense later. Though ironically enough, I'll maybe make some points about Chainsaw Man in here for some reason, because now, thinking about it, that line of thought kind of goes somewhere. Probably talk about it in the sequel. Anyway, after that whole mess, he goes home and takes a save. Yeah, that's just how saving works here, people. Just remember to take one every time, man. It's important. After a bit of time, he meets up with Sophia again and tells him about his next target, but also tells him about the fee. This begins our trend of how the gameplay loop will begin. Basically, Sylvia or somebody will call us up saying, hey, we need this amount of money in order to do the next job. Then you going around doing jobs in order to make the money, in order to do the job, in order to actually do the thing you actually want. Though, to note, your job is not just killing people. Before you can even do any of that fun bits, you gotta do the other side bits. You know, actual jobs. Though saying normal jobs is a bit of a stretch here when your jobs usually kind of go to collecting coconuts, collecting scorpions, pumping gas. Which, fun fact on that last one, New Jersey is required by law to have people do that for people. Not sure why, but okay. After doing these side jobs, you can actually go around and actually kill people. Yeah, I know that's a weird way of phrasing stuff, but that's just how it is. And these jobs are usually just kill everyone under a time limit, which is not that hard, but they're whatever. Though do note, those aren't the only missions throughout the entire game and ways to gain money, as there are also challenges along the way that are just really annoying. They're all just basically don't get hit. which ranges from doable to go fuck yourself. That's the best way to describe it. Though more times than not, that's more because you're not strong enough to actually handle them. And this is where sometimes where a lot of your money is actually going into. Travis actually has a master called Thunder Ryu, where basically he allows him to train up a bit and gain some stat bonuses like health, attack power, extending his combos, and usually they are simple enough, especially on PC, since I actually found a way to make them super broken on PC. Like, if you just do the PC controls for them on those particular trainings, they're like easy, no problem. Though do note, the cost of investment for these upgrades are not even that much. The real investments are where you need to go to Naomi. She'll basically upgrade your beam saber and allow it to be upgraded, even giving you new ones over time, which don't dramatically change gameplay all that much. Some of the attacks you'll do are a bit different, but the core aspect of your gameplay doesn't really change. Though to note, the really annoying thing about this is that usually after a bit, she won't give you really any new extras, usually happening every 2 to 3 boss fights, which is really annoying, but like, I guess it makes sense, but it's a little annoying to just drive there and actually waiting around to find out, oh, there's nothing new here, and having to go all the way back to actually get something else. Yeah, the driving. Let's actually talk about that. This game's an open world, and I'm just gonna actually say something actually a very hot take on this. Like, I'm gonna talk about something good about it, but like, my biggest problem with it is that it just has a lot of wasted space that really doesn't add anything to the game, because you can go on treasure hunts, go after love cup balls, which are items throughout the levels that you can just collect, and in order to get all the upgrades for love cup, because you could just trade those in to get a special upgrade. Trust me on this, they're worth it, though only a few of them, and you have to do New Game Plus in order to get better upgrades, which is very weird. But like, that's really it. There's nothing much else outside of that. You can also spend your money at a shop where you can change your clothes out, but I didn't do it all that much and only changed it so that Travis's coat is black instead of red. Other than that, I didn't really change all that much. And like, to counter my own self, while I think it's being very inefficient with its space, I do think it has a really good point, and it has a very useful thing for its thematical theme. Or at least a thing that I like to think about. Okay, it's time to actually talk about something interesting. You see, the thing is that I think that gets overlooked by the game and everyone else, is that, practically speaking, all the assassins throughout the entire game are fundamentally hiding themselves except the last one. A good example of what I'm referring to is something like Dr. Peace, who is a cop, but throughout his entire introduction, you keep hearing him talk about how, none of this really matters to me, like, I want to connect with my family, but like, it's already too late, I'm already addicted to the blood, what are you gonna do? It is in these final moments it's where he's able to fundamentally be real, for lack of a better term. Being able to talk frank to a fellow monster, for, again, a lack of a better term. And I can keep going. Destroy Man is a guy who's pretending to be a superhero, trying to placate his own desire of being righteous, while just being a sadistic killer. There's Shinobu, who kills her literal friend just to hide the secret of what she really is. Holly Summer is a scientist who hides behind her traps to truly hide who she really is. Let's Shake is literally no one, hiding the facsimile that he has nothing behind him. Harvey is a show performer who makes his kills under the show. Speed Buster hides as a cranky old woman. Bad Girl is an idol who, while enjoys the bloodshed, but also conversely treats it as this begrudging thing that she does all the time. And Darkstar is a literal misdirection. And the last one we'll talk about later, but you get the idea of what I'm talking about, right? But then you have Travis, an otaku who wears his assholeness on his sleeves, who also just kills people. and he only does it for the fun of it. I think a lot of times the game doesn't really particularly show Travis in any sense of flattery, more in a sense of this is just who he is. His perversions, his bloodlust, his love for his cat, hanging out with his friends, and, his normalcy. Yes, the other assassins treat this like another part of the day, while Travis here treats this like his moment to shine, the moment to truly live. And that's why the jobs, in my mind, are to emphasize his normalcy, that his mundanity is why he searches for these fights. And it's most prescient during his fight with Dr. Peace, where he talks about fighting his own kind, and we just see the pure glee he has with most of his fight, being able to fight at times where he just can't hide his bloodlust. Ironically enough, he treats this as unserious that they are, though he treats it in a different manner, treating it as something you just do, like anything else. He doesn't particularly respect them, and in some regard I get, but he doesn't particularly get why it is like this. Like, why are we all doing this jig? You know what I mean? Like, why aren't we fighting until we die in a glorious end? And it is only until Holly Summers' fight that he truly understands their view, and actually understands this whole system, and why they participated, and begin to see them more as human than just fights and bodies. Which, to point out, I'll leave alone until the second game, because I have a lot to say on the second game. In any case, the idea of normalcy bleeds into his daily life. Like, would any of the game's more unsavory elements hit as hard without these elements of supposed normalcy? Like, what is the idea of bloodshed that's not being the default? What is cutting grass without the extreme cutting of heads? Which really, at the end of the day, is the same thing to Travis. He doesn't particularly treat these two activities in any shape differently. Sure, he enjoys one more than the other, but still does them regardless as though they are the same and result in the same thing: payment. This is just how he is, and I think that is worth pointing out for a lot of people, because I think the game has something to say about how we treat normalcy, as this nebulous idea that functionally only serves to hide something from society and themselves, and by extension, society's true face. Like, he is treated as an otaku loser, but in the same breath, he is treated as an equal and somewhat powerful being. Yet these ideas contradict very much, but are accepted regardless. To add to the discussion, one can even argue that the game can comment on the nature of psychopaths and how they hide themselves through the nature of their ability to just blend into normal society, because more times than none, tendencies of a psychopath are kinda actually liked by most society. So in a way, it's able to get away with way more shit because nobody really questions a psychopath's behavior. Though that's more in the traditional sense of the known idea of the psychopath and, serial killers. That's more of an addition than anything, rather than something I'm willingly say that actually adding to this. I'm just making a comment about that. Maybe somebody smarter than me can add to this conversation or this angle, but again, some other time. This next section is more tangential, but I feel as though it gets to the idea I'm talking about, and maybe a greater part of the discussion we can talk about some other time. That is the idea of the thought of normality and our perception of it. If you know me, I have a weird catchphrase for myself whenever I deal with people. Normalcy is the delusion of the masses. If not, well, there you go. I usually use this line when I find someone saying, "Oh, it's too weird," or "it's not normal," when dealing with someone trying to criticize a piece of media in a general sense. Because in general, I just have to roll my eyes, because it's a non-critique, as it basically adds nothing and makes the complaint pointless, as it's just meant to be a jab at someone and not an actual thought about the game or the particular material that we're talking about, and how it ineffectually portrays the ideas and the themes of what the creator is trying to do. Like, oh no, this game has some weird characters. And I mean, so what? Is that really preventing you from enjoying the story that it is trying to tell? And I think a lot of times, as much as the game uses it as a kind of shock value, I think it ironically hampers the ability of us being able to tell when it's being genuine or not. Because sometimes a game can be too weird, because sometimes it's so esoteric that the ideas of what it's trying to say or do get lost in the minutia of it all. Which can actually be a good critique, but it is never used that way. And that's not to say that the game there is only like one interpretation, because like art can have multiple interpretations. I'm just saying we are ignoring an aspect of the game because we have these weird lenses of life that we view all art with, that if it doesn't fit this entire structure, it is indecipherable. But only through that only simple lens that we pretend to have. If that makes sense. And I think the game is critiquing that, or at least talking about it in a way that's less forward. You know what I mean? I'm sorry for this little tangent here, but I felt it was necessary because it's kind of hard to talk about that particular angle of the game without talking about the broader aspect about it. So, let's actually move on. And I really actually have nothing more else to talk about than the ending, so let's actually talk about it now. The ending of the game is more built on a bunch of ideas, but for the most part, here's what happened. You see, Travis learns after killing Batgirl that this whole thing he's been doing is actually a lie. Yeah. And he is like, well, what? And we only learn this through Sylvia's mom, which I'll talk about this in the sequel, but just know I'm not a fan of this. I literally made a video about this, but like, my point being is, I don't like it, and I think the game could have done better. Though, then again, I think this might have been the idea that this was just the one game, but again, side point, let's move on. However, he's already this far deep and decides to keep going. And the next assassin comes in, basically stealing his bike, telling him to meet him somewhere in the desert. And after a bit of driving, we actually meet the guy and his Darkstar, who says he's our father. But then quickly dies because, like, come on, go on. And then we meet this girl, who's basically like, what? Seriously? You believe that shit? It's kind of funny in a lot of ways, but who is this? So, okay, the game has kind of been a little wishy-washy about what exactly is the deal with Travis's backstory, because a few times the game will mention it and not exactly go into depth. And it's only here do we actually learn what's up with that. Because you see, this is John. Jean, I think that's how you pronounce it. Yeah, Jean. I keep saying when to say John. Jean here actually killed his parents. Now, big shocker, but like, this is the whole reason why he actually did it. And he just forgot it because he was in a drunken stupor. We'll talk about this more later because this will tie it to something else, but point being is, John was his actual target the entire time. And John tries to elaborate about why she did it. And like, due to age rating, they couldn't actually tell you what it was. But like, let me just put it to you like this. It wasn't good. Let's just say, best way to put it. Travis' parents were dicks. And they totally deserved their fate. But at this point, Travis is in too deep and has to practically fight her. And John will have to fight her, will fight us anyway because fuck you. And let me just tell you, this final boss is bullshit. Like, oh my god, who designed this fight? Like, I'm not even sure how the game wants you to handle this fight in general. The fight basically negates most of your mechanics and prevents you from being able to actively do anything against her that requires more of the advanced mechanics. You're locked out of those mechanics in their entirety, which is really fucking annoying. And what's worse, if you die here, you have to do the whole thing. No individual checkpoints for the individual phases, which are just annoying. And it's not helped that she has a one-shot, and it's really, again, annoying. But in any case, you are soon able to defeat her, and, well, it's really tragic in the end. Travis has really no idea, really is conflicted, but has to kill her, because this is what it is. There's no going back. And thus kills her, putting her to rest. And soon enough, we're back in the future with Travis on the cam, reflecting on everything that has happened to him in the last few days. And then somebody else comes in his room, slices down the door, and tries to kill him. And that's where we meet Henry. Yeah, Henry. I haven't talked about him because, look, every so often there's a hard part about a story where I don't understand the point of Henry in the story. It feels more like a, ain't that weird? Ironically, I know. Where it's like, he reveals a bunch of stuff, like, he's actually Sylvia's husband, and like, he's already know what's going on, it's been like, yeah, I do want to kill you, because I'm also your brother, which is just very complicated and stupid, and like, I feel like they had a point for Henry, but I'm not entirely sure what. My ability to analyze this is very rough, and I apologize on anyone here. It's just how it is for me. But in any case, this is where we fight him, and I gotta say, the fight is actually kind of nice, though it does have an insta-kill attack again, which... Anyway. Basically, the game then ends with them squaring off. As, well, that's just it. They clash, and we don't know how it ends. Though we do later on learn what happened. We'll explain that in the second game, because yes, we're gonna cover that. But that's for another day. At the end of the day, No More Heroes is a good game. That's esoteric, weird, but still very fascinating. There's a reason why there's a cult following for this game and a bunch of other Suda51 works. Because he's interesting, he knows what he wants, and he's trying to make something interesting, but yet he's never clear about all the things he wants to do. The gameplay's really nice, though it can get a little repetitive. The music is really nice, even though it's the same song over and over again. Though it is remixed enough in a good number of ways to make it interesting. I didn't talk about it because I'm not a music guy. As much as I know music theory and all that junk, let me tell you, that doesn't mean I can talk about it very effectively. You know what I mean? But that's beside the point. The game's good. If you can buy it, go buy it, play it, and so on and so forth. Next time, we're going to talk about No More Heroes 2 or some other game I want to talk about. And I gotta say something here that's really weird. I think 2 is the best one in the series. See ya.